the construction industry is always behind schedule. That is, I always thought that was a stereotype.
Sure, maybe we've evolved a bit since the pyramids, but it's largely done on paper or on spreadsheets, and they put sticky notes on walls and start to make daily plans. And so that's exactly what you look at. You see opportunity, right? But then you talk about the realities of construction, and we talk about an industry that goes back to the pyramids and beyond. Right?
Where's technology going to stop? Is it going to get to a stage where it's so advanced that actually it's going to take over our jobs? What jobs is it going to take over? I mean, that's always been the age-old discussion, right?
Things are made easy for us, so we're willing to give up control. We're willing to let things just be simple. And it doesn't have to be as robust or great as it used to be. It doesn't have to be as detailed as it used to be. Man, if it's easy, I'm willing to do it. It's about capturing data and structuring data. The more that we're able to do that, the more that you're going to start to see this predictive analytics. We've got to look at what processes, what services, what jobs require uniquely human characteristics to provide value.
Well, first of all, actually, Dave, you're a man of experience. You've been in lots of industries. You and I met in a mutual sort of client setting. I think you were the CMO at the time, and I was the agency. Tell us firstly about your background and how you've led up to where you are now, and tell us where you are now.
No problem. So I've spent almost 30 years working with growing companies on kind of go-to-market strategy. Now I can talk about it in retrospect, going, it's been about go-to-market strategies. Over the course of my career, early days, I didn't think of it that way. But really, sales, marketing, business development, how do you take a company, usually a technology type company, data and analytics type company, how do you take that and grow it? So I've gone through, different parts of my career. I've spent time with companies that were in a particular market trying to provide a solution. And how do you bring together sales, marketing, business development, and product to kind of align, to kind of thread the needle to drive growth?
I see. Yeah, it's funny you should say that actually, because the go-to-market label now is that's what we're calling it now. But before it was a little bit more. It was a little bit more fluffier. The edges were a bit more blurry. Is it analytics? Is it marketing? Is it sales?
Yes,
but now the
right.
go-to-market moniker is now that is the label now, right?
Yeah, I'd say that and commercial growth. I mean, those are the two things where people, are looking at. Yeah, but so as a marketing person, I think that I find that helpful, because then when I say go to market strategy, people are like, oh, okay, I get that. Whereas, if I said that 25 years ago, if I said it 25 years ago, people are like, go back to your MBA, go back to your MBA class, kind of thing.
So tell me about the sector. We'll dive into the company after, but the sector that you are in at the moment, the sector that you are working in and trying to develop those go-to-market strategies.
Yeah. So I'm with a company. It's the parent company's Mocha Systems, and we have a software division called TouchPlan. And what we are is we are a construction technology company. So what we have is a set of services and tools that serve the commercial construction industry, which is a multi-trillion-dollar industry globally. And what we're doing is, really trying to bring to this marketplace a better way to put commercial buildings up, in terms of managing all the resources that go along with it.
So we are talking big builds. We're not talking like small, commercial. We're talking skyscrapers. We're talking these huge on the skyline type buildings, right?
Yes. If you you and any of your listeners go and look out your windows and you see any cranes, you see any major construction projects going on, there's a chance that our company's working with the firms on those projects, or there's tools that are there potentially that are in our space that are on that. So it's a huge opportunity for disruption and innovation.
Why? So just because this podcast is about this technology disruption in all sectors, and I guess what's drove us to the conversation we're having today is that it's very easy to talk about technology when you're talking about the Googles and the Facebooks and the Airbnbs and all that, because it's, sort of technology driven. What this podcast is really interested in is how technology is driving those traditional industries and, and almost the bricks and mortar type things that are, slow to adopt to technologies. And that's what about. And I guess there's no more traditional industry than construction, because construction is very hands-on. It's very, it's very traditional in terms of the thinking and the physical doing as well. Tell us why the construction industry is like that.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I was thinking about it as I was getting ready to talk to you today. I mean, you can think about construction. Think about the pyramids in Egypt, right? I mean, think about that. Somebody at some point said, "Look, I want this big triangle to emerge on a landscape where you could see from miles and miles away on your camel and see this on the horizon. And this is how I want it to look." And they had a vision for how this thing was going to look. And then they turned around and said, "Okay, yeah, get a bunch of rocks and put it up and make it look like that." And then they had to actually do it, right? Now you think about that, how long ago that was, right? Construction, go back to the pyramids, construction hasn't changed a lot since then, right? What happens is that people have a vision for what they want, and they turn around and they say, "All right, we need materials, we need people, we need to schedule time, we need money to get, to get this." And the way that modern construction is being done is sure, maybe we've evolved a bit since the pyramids, but it's largely done on paper or on spreadsheets, and they put sticky notes on walls and start to make daily plans. And so we are starting to look at this saying, look, there's this multi-trillion-dollar global industry. There's tons of data being created. There's an opportunity to bring more certainty to these projects, because every project is over budget and over schedule, off schedule. And so let's start to bring some technology to this space so that way this can be done better.
So let's go
And
back to that point there about the construction industry is always behind schedule. That is, I always thought that was a stereotype, but is that true of reality? Is that actual reality?
yeah, and again, as somebody, you mentioned how we first met. We met in the financial industry, like financial technology industry. So I'm relatively new to construction, and I agree with you. It was something that always seemed like it was like a stereotype. No, it's true. Every project is over budget and not on schedule.
Always behind. Always
And
behind.
and so, but what happens is you've got an industry of people that are going, well, we all know this is true, but we just put up with it. And we try to manage it through contracts, like litigation, through, if you don't get it done on this time, I'm going to sue you or whatever. Like, there's a better way to do it now with data, and by looking at, how can you start to bring in outside influences into the process, so that way you're analyzing that, going, we can do this more efficiently. We don't have to put up with that. We can make things a lot more certain. And that's really where I found it fascinating when I got to this space, construction space, to say, hey, look, I think there's a huge opportunity for disruption.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that they put up with it and they deal with it with patches like litigation, things like that, and the fact that actually the heart of the problem never really gets solved, right? And
That's
and I
right.
guess that is true of many traditional industries, construction included. So tell me about the technology disruption part. That's the bit I'm most excited about, in terms of how
Yeah.
are you disrupting that space that have been going for hundreds of years, that has never changed very much.
Yeah. So what we've got is a point solution we call TouchPlan. And
Touch
TouchPlan
plan.
is
Yeah.
TouchPlan. And what we offer is this ability to do what we call daily planning. So let me take a step back. When a big project is like green lighted and said that we're going to go ahead and move forward with it, they create what they call a master schedule, which is generally this big, wide schedule for when things in general are supposed to happen. This floor is supposed to be up by this time. This floor is supposed to be up by this time, but it's a pretty general schedule. That needs to be translated into a daily schedule. So now, how do I execute on a daily basis with the people, materials, equipment, all the things that are impacting us to make sure that I stick to the master schedule. What we're offering is a tool that allows you to manage all those things I just said: people, materials, equipment, health and safety issues, all those things. So that way you can, at the most granular detail, manage your daily project so it stays on track.
So how is that managed now then, physically? As in how, where is it? The tools, materials, times, what things need to be done when? Where is that physically
Okay.
stored?
So, yeah, so that's interesting. I was amazed when I was told this, and it's true. So, when you go to a job site, you'll see there's these trailers on the job site. They literally come together on a daily basis and they put sticky notes on the wall
No way.
in that trailer to say, here's what we're gonna do here, here's what this group's gonna do. And they do it on paper. And I'm
What,
like, no,
even for
no, we're
like
not
these
doing
big
that.
construction projects?
Yes,
That's
yes,
crazy.
yes. So the most advanced projects are, oh, we're going to use a spreadsheet for this, right? So now it's Excel, which, by the way, to most of your listeners, it's Excel is probably the biggest competitor to anybody listening in any industry. When you talk about disrupting, well, we could just use Excel to do that. Well, that's the same thing. Like, oh, we could just use Excel to do this, right? Yes, that's probably the most advanced how people are going when it comes to construction. But it's like paper or Excel. Now think about that, as you said, on this multi-billion-dollar skyscraper or hospital or dormitory or manufacturing plant and things like that. Then you start to go, this is insane. I cannot believe
It
this
is
is how they're
insane.
managed.
I honestly thought that the sticky notes, and I've seen it, in movies and documentaries and things like that. But if that is crazy that that still happens in this day and age. And yeah, I mean, in our business, I mean, I think for that problem there must be like every tech company's dream, because they're looking at this and thinking, what, this is rife for disruption, right?
Yes. Well, and so you come in as somebody like you and I who maybe never have been in construction. That's exactly what you look at. You see opportunity,
Mm,
right?
mm.
But then you talk about the realities of construction, and we talk about an industry that goes back to the pyramids and beyond, right? And there's not, and think about how much of it's evolved. It's a slow moving industry and slow to adopt to change, because the risk of change is so great. The risk of change, I could get fired if I do something different than sticky notes, right?
I
I'm
see.
never
I
going to
see.
get fired for putting sticky notes on a wall.
I've got you.
And so now it's, how do you make a solution that is easy to use, it's approachable, it's adoptable, and that you show the value, right? You show the return on the investment of time. And so there's a high bar to get adoption in this kind of case, because again, I'm not going to get fired if I put sticky notes on the wall, but I might if I pay, a couple $100,000 for a tool that nobody really uses.
Yeah, I see. I guess in terms of it all boils down to those decision makers who are calling the shots are all still at that traditional level. They may be in the older generation where they're coming, they're still calling the shots, they're still holding the purse strings, and they're still used to those traditional ways of doing things. But I guess does it help that there's young blood coming into the industry and start and
Yeah.
bringing in this technology type of thinking?
Yes, it does. So you're absolutely correct. So that's where, again, you've characterized it pretty accurately, in that, and in the construction industry, and I think it's pretty much this way globally. It's not just here in the United States. You also have another component to it: is construction companies generally start as family-owned businesses.
Hmm.
And so what you got are dad and then sons, or dad and daughters, and or could be a parent. Families are running this, right? And so they are stuck. They're not necessarily progressively thinking. They're thinking about just the business and just keep running it the way they want to run it. Well, so that is a component to this. And then what's changing things in the construction industry, there's two real things. One is exactly what you pointed out: generational shifts. We all have our cell phones. We all have an expectation of things working really well and being very easy. So you've got that. And then interestingly, in the construction industry, you've got these families that are looking who build these large construction companies up, and they want to capture they want to get their wealth. They want to get their money out of the company. So what they're doing is they're turning them into employee owned firms. So
Mm.
now what they're structuring, the ownership structures, they sell the company to the employees. The employees are the owners. Well, when there's an employee owned firm, now all the employees are actually stakeholders in the business. And so anything that can make operations more efficient is actually something that people will look at. So
That's
in my
interesting.
opinion, those two factors are converging and now making it where companies are compelled to want to get this information, get better processes in place, and start to change.
Because it's actually going to make efficiency. It's actually going to save money and manpower, right?
That's right. That's right. And then you factor into this other component. We're talking about at the point solution where it's a project's being done. But when you look at let's say a hospital or an office building, there's an owner that's putting up the money to make that project happen.
Yeah,
The owner also now wants to reduce the amount of risk
of
of what's
course.
going on the project. So they have an interest in knowing what's going on the project. So that's also driving this interest in, okay, give me some data about what's happening on the project so I can also keep an eye on that myself. So it's an interesting space where now technology is starting to open up communication lines and allow people to make better decisions.
So, on that note, then, TouchPlan is a tool that enables the collaboration that we have now in physical format, in terms of the sticky notes, in terms of the blueprints, in terms of the plans, and sometimes spreadsheets. It is a tool that converges and brings all this together, and
Yeah.
essentially records and into an data, basically, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. It's almost like, I mean, again, if you've used Asana, if you've used a Gantt charts,
that's great.
these are things that, again, in construction, it's fairly new, but in a lot of industries or a lot of where you use tools for project management,
Sure.
you'd be familiar with that. But what this is actually built is specifically for construction.
Yeah, of
So when you
course.
fill
Yeah.
out a ticket, it will talk more in the language and lingo, and the taxonomy is built for construction.
Sure, sure. So essentially this is not to belittle it, but TouchPlan is essentially a Asana or a project management tool at a very high level for the
Yep.
construction industry.
That's right. Right. Now, again, it's been built for the construction industry. So now all the analytics you can start to get out of it is geared toward construction. So what matters in construction, which crews are behind schedule, where, material issues, supply chain issues, we can start to provide analytics around that because it's focused on construction versus if you try to use a Monday or an Asana or something
Sure.
like
Yeah, yeah.
that,
Where
it's just like you're not going to have that ability to get that kind of intelligence.
no, 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 that's not I understand. So great. So in terms of the technology adoption, then let's talk a little bit about how do you get blue collar industries to achieve digital transformation, let's call it. How do you get, so in a touch plan you must have overcome lots of these hurdles and challenges of trying to get traditional construction companies to adopt this digital way of planning their construction projects.
Yes.
How how do you get traditional blue collar type industries to adopt digital transformation?
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's probably the biggest hurdle and obstacle to our growth, to be honest with you, is, you think about it on a job site, the amount of people that, have to be able to use this and collaborate on this, right? So you have to, the word that we throw around and we focus on is approachability. Now, approachability, when you think about it, is it's got to be inviting. Somebody that's approachable, or anything that's approachable makes you want to go to it versus you being pushed to it. So we have this concept of approachability when it comes to our product, making sure that you don't feel like it's daunting. It's easy to use. And then there's an approachability to the people that we hire. So we have a fairly robust customer success team that works on a daily basis on training, providing best practices, and making sure people know how to use it, because this tool doesn't work if people aren't using it. You have to be able to put the data in to make sure it works. So we have approachability we look at approachability as an asset when it comes to, okay, the kind of people that are on our customer success team. Are they approachable people? Would you like to go have a beer with them or talk to them? Again, you start to think that way. You can't have somebody who's stuffy and all buttoned up working with construction workers. That's just not going to work. So you have to think about approachability there. I
That's
think those
interesting.
are some things. Yeah.
Usually when people talk about technology, they think it's all automated, it sells itself, it's self-serve, it's self-onboarding, which is in our space. But actually, when it comes down to it, actually, no matter what the software is, what the technology is, there is always still a human element.
Yeah, and I do think there's a human element, and the human element can, again, when I talk about approachability, and to be honest, this is something that's convinced me of this during my time at this organization. When you try to tackle this problem, is approachability takes on so much in terms of what does that mean, right?
Mm,
If you're going to approach me, you got to trust that when you come to me, I'm not gonna do something to harm you. I'm not gonna push you away. I'm gonna be accepting of you, right? So it's like approachability means that you've got to trust that this is gonna help you, right? So this psychology of approachability, I think, is whether you're developing a tool for the construction industry or maybe a direct to consumer tool or solution, it's the approachability is what's going to get people coming back to it.
mm,
Think about all the apps that are created where
yeah.
people use it for like once or twice and then they never use it again. It's because it's probably they haven't built up a trust or they haven't seen the approachability or the value of that, right? And that's, I think, where there's a common thread no matter where you go. As we start to develop these tools that are going to be innovative and disrupt industries, approachability is going to be a topic I think more and more people are going to bump into when it comes to
Interesting.
this.
In all sectors.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. I mean, I think, again, I don't think it matters. I think what's interesting is, as you alluded to before, is the younger generations are more willing to approach something. They're not afraid, right? They're
Yeah.
not afraid to
They're
try
not scared of new
something new.
things.
They're not
Yeah.
scared. No, right, exactly. What they got, but with them, the challenge then is you get them there. Now, well, do they trust that this is going to help them?
Mm,
Right. And they're pretty cynical, right? The younger generations are they will not be trustworthy. They will not trust the solution quickly. They're very cynical. So it's getting them to the solution and then getting them to trust it is where there's going to be challenges for some folks. But I think it all relates to approachability ultimately.
It's really interesting that in terms of the adoption on how quickly certain generations adopt technology. As we move along this timeline, that technology becomes more ingrained in our everyday life. I think we were there with low levels of AI.
Yeah.
Already we've got Alexas and Google Homes and things that are controlling light bulbs and all this kind of automation and things like this in the home. Where does it stop? Is it going to overtake, TouchPlan, for example, is there to bridge the collaboration between people in the construction industry. And then in the home, we've got devices and automation and things like that. Where's technology going to stop? Is it going to get to a stage where it's so advanced that actually it's going to take over our jobs? What jobs is it going to take over? I mean, that's always been the age-old discussion, right?
Yeah. I mean, my opinion is I tend to probably look at things more from a dystopian perspective. I do think we are at risk of giving up more control
Hmm.
over how things are going to work because we just want things to be easy. The interesting thing is, believe it or not, one of the most dystopian movies I have ever seen was a Disney movie.
Which one's that?
It Wally.
Oh, Wally, yeah, great
If you
movie.
go back and you yeah,
Great
if your
movie.
listeners go back and you watch Wally now, there's it's like they got this cute kind of thing going with the robot and all that stuff, but you go into the second half of that movie, it gets a little dark, and there's so much truth to it when you think about when you look at when that movie was made. It was made before smartphones. It
Mm.
was made early 2000s. There's so much that there was forecast on how things are going to go. And I think part of the problem with human nature is now it's being made, things are made easy for us. So we're willing to give up control. We're willing to let things just be simple. And it doesn't have to be as robust or great as it used to be. It doesn't have to be as detailed as it used to be. Man, if it's easy, I'm willing to do it. So to your point, I think we are going in a direction where I think as generations become more comfortable with technology and start to trust technology more, I do think there's going to be a reduction in the things that we need to do. Now, I always do think that there are things that humans can do that machines can't. It comes down to machines can't have empathy.
Hmm.
Machines, they don't get that.
Hmm.
So there's things that they're innately human. We're going to have to adapt to doing. But yeah, I mean, ultimately on a job site, one of the things that's happening in construction is there's a big movement for prefabrication.
That's right.
So can you build a floor of a building somewhere else, or components, and just assemble them on site versus building them on site?
Hmm.
And so you look at that, that's going to get automated. I do think we're going to be, as we trust technology more, we're going to start to see that it starts to infiltrate more and more of our lives.
Going back to your point about Wall-E, which was a great movie, my kids love that film, and to be fair, I think I always suggest watching it for them. Actually, it's for me, but actually, I think there's a part in the film where they get suggested, they get suggested certain drinks and movies and things to do and things like that, and then that slowly, and because it's like you said, because it's easy and it's simple, and so they just take it. They just take what's being offered to them. And whilst we think, oh, that's so far away in the future, if it ever happens, when we think about our lives today in a very subtle way, actually, when in our everyday lives, as we're browsing through the LinkedIn's and the Facebooks and the Instagrams and the Twitters, when we go onto Netflix or YouTube or Prime and watching things, and we get things put in front of us that are we thought you would like, those suggestions, and
Yeah,
and Facebook's gone through that whole Cambridge Analytica thing. Actually, we're probably closer to that Wall-E situation than we think we are.
absolutely. Those are predictive analytics, right? The
Yeah.
more data that we're in, it comes back to, it's kind of related to this conversation about why I'm interested in construction. It's about capturing data and structuring data. The more that we're able to do that, the more that you're going to start to see this predictive analytics, which people like to call AI,
Sure.
start to infiltrate everything.
Yeah.
Right? And as you said, I mean, it's like, there are times you wonder if your phone's listening to the conversation,
Oh
because all of a
yeah.
sudden you get an ad that was like, wait a minute, how did it know? Well, of course, there's data that you're creating by using your phone that's making those suggestions. So I think, for us, we talk about that at TouchPlan as well, is the interest and need to be able to market predictive and prescriptive analytics. So predictive analytics, hey, from the data that we have, when you're scheduling this job, this is going to likely happen. This is going to be a problem. You should have a
Interesting.
conversation and do that, right? Where
Yeah.
we talk about the value of that when it comes to construction. Same things with prescriptive analytics. This just happened. Okay, that's a problem. We see this data. You're now behind schedule a week. Here's what we suggest you do to replan this
Interesting.
project so you can get it back on track, right?
Right.
So there are some real positives that can come from all of this, but I do think that we are going to be seeing predictive and prescriptive analytics start to take over, and then us trusting that and doing what it says and just saying, okay, well, it's saying that I should do that. I'm just going to go ahead and do it.
That's
Yeah,
interesting about the data in the construction industry. So is it get to input? So you mentioned right at the beginning of this podcast that obviously it's usual, it's quite common that construction projects overrun budgets and time, and data predictive analytics is going to allow you to predict if you are going to run over based on different variables.
yeah.
And is it going to get to a stage where, which is what I want to touch upon in terms of where your technology is going, is it going to get to a point where, hey, we've got so much data in building certain types of 20 plus story type buildings that actually when we record all the requirements and budgets and timelines and things like that, that's actually going to tell you orders of things to do and almost tell you what kind of things you need to do, materials and problems that might occur of the building of this type.
Yes. Yes. So what you're describing, so it's interesting that you say that, because we didn't actually talk a lot about this in the lead up. So as I said, I work for a company called Mocha Systems Inc. And one of our divisions is called TouchPlan, which is this daily planning. We also have another division that's a services division that's called Mocha Services. And Mocha Services works with owners to help them guide them through the process. So if you're Amazon, or if you're some university or something, and you want to build something, you're not a builder. You're the company or whatever you are. You need somebody to actually help guide you through that process. What we see is this evolution of this entire process from beginning to end becoming more data driven. So that way, as you just said, you give at the beginning of the process, here's the guiding principles, here's the specifications, this is what I want from the building. Based on that, and then based on the data that we know and our experience and understanding what goes on with projects like yours, here's what we can predict how long it will take for the project, what kind of materials you're going to need, what the cost should be, the optimal cost should be on these materials. We see a direct line to being able to do something like that. Now, is that something that could be done tomorrow? No, nobody's doing that in this space. But I come to the table and I go, well, within the next 5 to 10 years, you could start to show that to people, because you need to start collecting that data and being able to, to put the technology to that data to be able to provide those results.
We mentioned data a lot, and I'm just trying to Google who said this, but you mentioned data a lot with regards to TouchPlan. But actually, when we look at companies, big tech companies like Uber, Airbnb, and whatnot, a lot of people say that Uber is not a taxi company, it's a data company.
Yeah.
At which point does TouchPlan become not a planning tool, but actually a data tool that actually predicts and models construction projects?
So, so for someone like me, I believe every company is a data company. And I've written about this. Every business is a data business. I've written about it, and I think so. To me, it's not soon enough. Like, I do believe that we end up becoming a construction data business versus this daily planning tool. It's about the intelligence and what you can get out of that, right?
Sure.
Is what we're talking about.
Sure.
So, how long does it take? It really comes back to this approachability thing. You can't get the data unless people are willing to use the product. So you think about Uber, people were pretty quick to want to say, all right, I'll jump in a car and I'll just take that car because I know when it's going to get there, right? So the quicker that people start to trust and adopt these solutions, the quicker you can become a data business, a true data business.
Sure. That's very interesting. That's very interesting. So every company, you say that every company is a data company at heart, or should be.
I believe so. I mean, again, I think, in what I've written about is that I don't care what business you're in, what sector industry you're in, you're creating data just by existing. Your customers are creating data, your internal employees are creating data. The more that you start to look at it from a data-centric approach and you start to harness that information, then you can become more efficient in your operations. When it comes to customers, the more that you can harness data, the better the customer experience is going to be. So now you can start building products better. You can start communicating with them better. You can start selling to them better. So data, in my opinion, is really at the core of being able to provide the most value. And so companies just got to look at that.
I guess it's the case of every company is a data company, but are they collecting it, and how are they using it? Are they using it efficiently?
Yeah, exactly. And do you believe that? I think that's the other piece. Like, you can read an article or a book, or you can have somebody come in and tell you that, a consultant or somebody tell you that. But if you don't believe it, if you don't believe that every business is a data business, then you're not going to be able to start to adopt this as part of your culture. You're not going to be able to put the things in place because you don't really believe it. You just kind of like, oh yeah, it makes sense. I'm smart enough to know that makes sense, but I don't believe it. I mean, I'm one of those people that believes it. When I look at a business, I mean, we're almost getting to the point. It's funny at TouchPlan where they know where I'm going with it, because you'll see it. I'm going, oh, there's a way for us to structure data there. There's a way for us to structure data there. And people are like, yeah, this is just a planning tool. It's like, no, it's a data structuring tool. But I believe that. If you don't believe that, it's going to be really hard for you to start to kind of adopt that level of thinking.
Yeah, it could, because the way that you think about the data. So I think you and I have talked about data in our previous remits in the past, which is really interesting, because I'm with you. I believe that everything should be collected. Whether you use it or not is another thing, but everything's collected. Some people can argue that the more data you collect, the more dangerous the data holder becomes. I think I think there is two sides to this. However, what happens, Dave, when we've collected all the data? We can predict every single bit in the sector. Go back to the construction industry, for example. In order to build this type of building, the data is all there. We've got millions of lines of data points, and we know exactly how much glass, how much concrete, how much materials we need. We know exactly how much manpower, how much budget. We've got it to a T. Yeah. Now, when it's become so efficient, does it then take out the human element of business? Because we know exactly what we need to do. We know exactly, how it's going to be achieved. Some jobs are going to be lost and some jobs are going to be replaced or upskilled to other things. How do you see that when everything's like so optimized in terms of the data?
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I mean, and I do think, look, I think it's going to take a really long time for us to get to a point where, everything's optimized, or,
Sure.
you think about it too. It's like, there's always new things happening. You can have a construction site all figured out. And then there's like, for example, what we started talking about here, if there's a building going up in Manchester, UK, and you didn't plan that there was going to be a heat wave, once in a generation heat wave,
Yeah.
then you're going to have to adapt to that. So there's going to have to, there's no way you can always do that. But I do think, you touch on something important. And I think what it is we've got to look at what processes, what services, what jobs require uniquely human characteristics to provide value.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, for example, as I said, empathy is a human characteristic. You can't teach a machine how to feel like somebody else. So when you start looking at the mental health industry, you can have data and prescribe, okay, well, based on all these things, this is what you're suffering from. But can you really look somebody in the eye and show some empathy? Can you do that? You can't. You think about nursing, nurses, there's a bit when they talk about bedside manner, right? Or doctors, bedside manner. You can't teach that, And so that's not something that can be data can run. So I think what we're going to be looking at is, over the real long haul, is what jobs, what services, what goods, what things require human elements that are uniquely human. And those are the ones that people will be willing to, pay for or enjoy or experience, versus just data. Think about it. It's a little bit of what, it's going on right now. So I've got 4 kids, and my oldest is 23 and my youngest is soon to be 12. And the oldest kids all pay for Spotify to get music, but they will also go into a record store and buy a record.
Interesting.
Right.
Okay.
And so you think about this in this concept of what we're talking about. Spotify gives them the music that they should be watching. I think you're listening to. We think you're going to like this. We think you're going to like that. Based on you listening to these things, we think you're going to enjoy these. And then you find an artist that you like. And it's like, I want to hear the visceral sound of the hissing of the needle on the record. So I will go spend 5 times as much as we used to pay for on records to get that record. So I now have that visceral experience listening to what it sounded like if I was in the room when that artist made that music. That's an example, in my opinion, of where there's going to be this where data kind of gets to a point, and then there's this human element where people will be willing to pay for it.
Yeah, I see. The role changes from survival in terms of you need that product or item to actually I want it. Yeah, because
the human element is adding value to it.
Yeah,
right. A value that you can't get otherwise. I mean, I don't know. I don't know where that crossover occurs. I don't know when you start to go, oh, okay, whatever. It's almost like when you think about it, we talk again. I've got this, my youngest is 12, probably going to be among the last generation that learns how to drive a car, right? Because eventually, and probably within his lifetime, he's not going to have to drive a car. But think about why you like driving a car. What is it about driving a car that you enjoy? It's not getting from one place to another. I have a convertible, right? So it's like on a nice day, putting the top down, feeling the wind in my hair, and being able to drive around corners. There's something about that
Yeah.
experience I
Yeah.
really enjoy, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. On that
So
note,
anyway,
actually, with that as well, about how, electric cars, is it electric, your convertible?
no,
No,
no.
no.
I have a Mini Cooper S. I was just reading about this. For whatever reason, they don't have an electric version of that.
Right.
And they're hoping to come out with that in the next couple of years, but they don't
Yeah.
have it yet.
Yeah. So that on that note, I think over here it's by 2030, all there will be no more petrol or diesel
Yeah.
cars produced. It will all be electric. That's the mandate. But I guess going back to your point with the records is that at some point there will be that nostalgic element of it of, yeah, sure, everyone's driving these ultra quiet, ultra efficient cars, but then you get to a point where, hey, I really want to feel the engine. I want to really feel that nostalgic, and we will miss that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I guess going back to our point about the human element, that there will be a point where the human element will be the value and the cherry on the top of all the efficiencies and all the optimizations and all the data that that machines can provide, but you'll never be able to replace that human element.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, and unfortunately, again, getting back to that dystopian view of things, I mean, your children and my children will understand that on some things, but
Yeah.
as each generation follows, they're going to forget that. Just like maybe there was a thrill to riding in a horse-drawn
That's
carriage
it.
that
That's it.
you and I don't get, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and because our generationally, we lost that. It's going to happen where these things are just going to be like, yeah, there's nothing about that. It's old fashioned or whatever.
Yeah.
But there will always, I think, as long as humans walk the planet, there's always going to be this element of this is a uniquely human thing, and I'll value that versus I just want efficiency.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. No, I guess we're striving for efficiency, but actually the efficiency isn't the value. It's a practical optimization, isn't it? So going back to TouchPlan, where will TouchPlan go next then? Where you go next? We talked about the TouchPlan is for the construction industry, but actually once you've optimized, all the pain points of the construction industry, I guess there's no boundaries of other sectors that it can disrupt, right?
Well, I do think, again, we're looking at an industry that is in the early stages of starting to wake up to this kind of disruption. So I think there's a lot of time that, just to solve this problem, it's going to take some time.
Sure.
But then as I look at the entire construction process from the vision to occupancy, right, of a building, there's room for more data to be collected and analysis across every phase of that. So, for example, once we build an office building, right? The office building's up, there's people in it. There's going to be the minute that people start walking in and going up and down elevators, there's going to be wear and tear on the building.
Mm-hmm.
So now, how do you determine when the elevator needs to be
I
serviced?
see.
And
Okay.
how do you so you start to look at that, and you can just focus right there. And it's such a large industry that you could focus on not going to other places. It's just going a lot deeper
Oh, I
in the
see. Okay.
industry.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect
So
sense.
so
No.
and so that's where I personally think that we're probably looking at this as going, there's a process that we'd like to start to optimize and bring, more certainty from the beginning to the end. And there's room for us to use data and technology to bring certainty to a project process, from vision to delivery. That's really where I think we're going to continue to focus versus, oh, there's other industries could use it. Like we had a partner of ours tell us, you could go into the shipbuilding industry with this.
Mm.
And it's true. You could. Anything that has a project, you could develop a way to structure the data. I don't know that we need to do that. I think we can stick to large commercial construction that's complex and involves people and materials and all that. And
There's plenty of
could,
opportunity there already.
plenty of
Yeah.
options there.
Yeah. If only the Egyptians had TouchPlan, right?
That's right. If only the Egyptians had TouchPlan, King Tut could have seen his pyramid during his lifetime. He was only 14, so it probably could have had it built from the day he was born, whatever.
It was fantastic, fantastic. Dave, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. We're all friends with in our previous encounters, and it's it's fabulous to hear about what you're up to now with TouchPlan. And also, just for the listener as well, and if I'm okay to plug this as well, Dave has a weekly newsletter.
Yeah. Yep. It's called Friends of Dave.
Friends of Dave.
And and you can get it either on my LinkedIn profile or on Twitter. I'm David A. Frankel on Twitter.
Yep.
Yeah. And and it's one of those things. It's kind of I tackle on a weekly basis some of the topics that we talked about here that just happened during a week. And it's like, oh, let's talk about this. And then I share some links on interesting stories. And I appreciate that you've been a subscriber for a long time on that. So
no, it's fantastic. Dave, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. You always add lots of value and lots of strategic views of the world and business. And I hope that we speak again on this topic. But thank you for coming onto the podcast. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. Always fun talking to you, Terry. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Great.